Talking NFC West. Let's take a look at each of the teams in the division. We divvied them up before the show. Let's kind of check out what they lost, what they gained, the ins and outs. What do they need to do in Philly on day one of that draft? Should I start, Nate?
Yes, please.
All right, let's go with the LA Rams. Let's take a look at, kind of what they gained, what they lost. They lost Kenny Britt, right?
Yeah.
So they lost a receiver. They did add Robert Woods, who has some potential. I think they need a wide receiver. That's what I'm looking at. I mean, they did add a veteran in Andrew Whitworth, the only guy on the team older than they're also added new head coach Sean McVay. So they didn't have a great season last year. And I'm looking at Strager. If I look at draft stuff, I look at Strager's mock draft. And he's got Curtis Samuel going to them out of Ohio State. I like that. I also like a guy who was on Strager's ones to watch, Mr. Cooper Kupp. So in my world, they need a receiver because you get Jared Goff, right? You pay for this Ferrari. Ferrari needs some rims, right? You need those like obnoxious leather gloves with the Ferrari logo on them, all of that kind of stuff. That hat, you get the seat covers.
A lot of cologne.
You need to give him something to work with to see, what he can do, because you see what McVay got out of Kirk Cousins. Well, Cousins had a loaded offense and some weapons. Now you get rid of Kenny Britt, and Brian Quick's gone, Lance Kendricks, and so on. I don't know. You got to add some receiver help, I think.
Yeah, I would love to see Cooper Kupp in a Rams uniform. I don't know if he's there when they drafted 37. That would be great. Wide receiver and safety, I think, are their big ones. They lost 2 safeties this offseason. But the Rams, right? I mean, you lose all those weapons on offense. It's time to start building. I like Robert Woods. I'm not sure Robert Woods necessarily steps up and is what they hope is a number 2 for Tavon Austin right away.
And they don't pick until the second round. They don't have a ton of cap space left as far as free agency. So that was their offseason overhaul. What do we have next?
Yeah, let's go with the Seahawks. Let's go with my former team. Let's
You
talk
raised the
about
flag.
What's going on. I did raise the flag. Shout out to Seattle. Shout out to the 206.
That was cool.
Now let's start right out the gate with what they lost and then kind of what they picked up and then moving forward. I think the biggest loss for me is Stephen Hauschka. I mean, he was one of the more consistent pieces. Some say, oh, well, he missed a few kicks here and there. But I really liked him as a kicker out there in Seattle, and he was well respected. But the acquisitions, that's really what jumps off the page for me. Eddie Lacy, right out the gate, trying to address a need. The 25th ranked run game last year, and then they added Luke Joeckel, former number 2 overall pick. So those 2 guys right there stand out because we know that with the weapons they have at the wide receiver position, Doug Baldwin, Jimmy Graham, and then getting Tyler Lockett back healthy, you remember him going down. That was huge because he was the X factor. And then Paul Richardson, remember him making some plays when he needed to make some plays last year. Now you add all those guys in together. Offensively, I feel like they're going to have enough at the wide receiver position. Who can they lean on to run the ball? I'll just come out and say it right now. Eddie Lacy will have a huge year. Whoa. I know this is an overhaul segment, and we're talking about who's gained
Let's
and who
get bold,
lost.
Nate. How huge? What does that mean?
What I'm looking forward to. Eddie Lacy will have a career year. This is the year where he bet on himself, and he's in a system where they're leaning on the fact that he is a bigger back and he can't run down. They're looking at somebody that cannot replace Marshawn Lynch, but can duplicate some of the aggressiveness. And when we've seen Lacy at his best, he has ran downhill, put those shoulders in the middle of guys' chests.
A career year.
A career year.
His rookie year, he's going to surpass that.
Because of the weapons. Because there's going to be so much focus on the wide receivers.
11 touchdowns in his rookie year.
Yes, a career year. And I'm saying 12 touchdowns. Because, listen, you're going to have Russell Wilson back healthy. He sprained his ankle and sprained his knee last year. He didn't run at all. He was getting hit a ton. And then you get weapons on weapons on weapons back at the wide receiver position. So as a defense, they're going to come in saying, let's stop the receivers. Let's stop Russell. And they're going to say, oh, Eddie Lacy, he's falling off. He's going to come out aggressive and have a huge year. So that is I won't call it a hot take. That's the feeling I got right now.
Isn't his contract sort of like incentive-laden?
Yeah,
the Seahawks have incentives. He doesn't have a huge year.
It's always good when you bet on yourself. In the defense, they're always top 5, but then Earl Thomas is back. That's another guy coming back.
Rawls will be healthy. Procise. It's a nice
We'll see if Sherman's on the roster.
Huge, you mean his performance, not his weight.
Okay. I'm just asking because I come to you for my fantasy advice nice and early, and if you're saying Eddie Lacy, I'm
going all the way in on fantasy this year.
All right.
You had Mohamed Sanu. You said that before the season.
Save it. Flag it. I like it, Nate.
What do I got to go with? I'm going with the Niners.
Okay. Talk to me.
Greetings, everyone on the West Coast tuning in right now. I know it's been a long couple of years since Harbaugh left town. You've been through Tom Sula and now through Chip Kelly. The biggest addition that they made was Kyle Shanahan.
Yes.
When you get at the swagger of an offensive coordinator coming into a head coach who people are doubting as a head coach, Denver offers a job to Vance Joseph over Mike Shanahan's son. So now Kyle comes in and says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to spend some money. They have a ton of cap space.
$5 million fullback.
I love Kyle Juszczyk. All right, so this is my hot take. Nate, you had yours. Here's mine.
Give me something.
Kyle Juszczyk is not a fullback. That is a wrong label. He is an OW. What's an OW? An offensive weapon. It's a new fantasy position, Kay.
Sounds like
It's like the ultimate flex. He's going to play tight end. He's going to play fullback. He's going to play tailback. He is an OW. And if you're paying an OW $5 million, I like that deal.
He's
and
Polish. I love him.
He's Polish. He's from Harvard. He's got the smarts, and he's got some experience from Harbaugh's offense out there in Baltimore. But you look at Hoyer, you say, hey, we're not going to win a Super Bowl with Brian Hoyer. You're going to do all right with Brian Hoyer. And then you're going to find the quarterback of your future at some point, whether or not this year in the draft or next year or the year after that. There is a plan. Trust me, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have it. And then the veterans and Garcon. And you get a veteran guy like Hightower this past weekend. And then you also have Logan Paulson, who's a tremendous blocker out of Washington, who knows the system from Kyle Shanahan. And I know you're not excited about Marquise Goodwin and Aldrick Robinson.
It's like Taylor Gabriel, right?
Aldrick Robinson and Marquise Goodwin are both the Taylor Gabriels. They're both burners. They both can do it.
See Kyle Shanahan building something similar to what he had in Atlanta?
Yeah, they might go 4-12. They might go 6-10. They also might go 8-8. They also might go even better than that. There's a 6-year contract for Kyle Shanahan and for John Lynch. It's a long-term plan. I love the hiring of Kyle, and I like the pieces they added. They're not winning the Super Bowl this year. Hot take. The Niners aren't winning the Super Bowl. They're going to be better than they were last year.
I like that. OW?
OW.
That spells
offensive. Yeah, that's
offensive weapon.
Sound like Merrill Hodge. Factor back. That's your term.
That's
OW.
mine. The OW. Kyle Juszczyk. Put a T-shirt together. The OW, like the OG. The OW.
Yeah.
OW.
That's what I say when I hear that. Ow. All right.
Finish it off.
Let's go to the Cardinals, guys. And this is a fascinating offseason because here we had a team that felt like it was a breath away from the Super Bowl.
Okay.
And then we had a disastrous season. We have the reality show All or Nothing. It shows nothing. And they lost a lot. A lot of players left town. Let's bring up the offseason overhaul graphic.
Okay.
A lot of guys leaving. Now, Calais Campbell, what are you going to do? He got $60 million. Marcus Cooper got $16 million. But what I don't like is there's some names that aren't even listed. There's a lot of guys in the secondary they lost. And here's what I'm looking at this team. It's very fascinating going into the draft because we were at a fork in the road. We have two choices with the Cardinals. We can plan for the future or one last ride. One last ride with Carson Palmer's coming back, Larry Fitzgerald's coming back. And look, one last ride is really a tradition out in the desert. A lot of people who live in the desert one last ride, okay? I'm going to go a hot air balloon. I'm going to start a vineyard. I'm going to get into pottery. This is my last ride. Yeah. And this might be the Cardinals' last. That's what I'm doing during the commercial break. Carson Palmer.
He's so focused. I think he's looking up stats. He's coming up with desert metaphors.
Of course, yeah. You know, people on their bucket list time, all right? And in a way,
a lot of retirees
this
out
regime, there are, Nate. There's this regime of the Cardinals that has this on their bucket list. Time to start checking off those things. If it's go to a Super Bowl, Carson Palmer, 4 months older than Tony Romo, and he's had the 2 ACL surgeries. He's coming back. Right. Larry Fitz, the ageless one, is coming back. It would seem to me that if Carson and Larry were like, look, last year, that's the Cardinals. That's where we are right now. I don't see this roster. I think they might be done. The fact that they're coming back says I think they got something and brings me back to the draft. We've had this conversation this week with a guy like Carson Palmer. Do you spend that rich 13 number overall pick on his successor? Or do you go, you know what? We're going to get John Ross. We're going to get a playmaker who's going to blaze it and take one last shot. We're in a soft division, okay? We got 2 teams rebuilding in this division. Yeah. It's us in Seattle. If we can take out Seattle and we got something.
Which they have done.
I like it. And so the fact that they lost a few players, the secondary makes me nervous. I would get a player now, a playmaker now, whether it be a safety, of which there's some great ones in the draft, or another game breaker, and see if you can make that one last ride with Carson. Because after that, everything changes. That's the bucket list.
Yeah, you start off by saying they were a breath away.
Felt like it.
Super Bowl. It did feel like it. And then it went from a breath away to just don't hold your breath on them winning a game because they struggled tremendously. But
take my breath away.
Yeah, they got some weapons. Patrick Peterson's still one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Tyrann Mathieu. This is his first season back healthy. Last year, he was still recovering from that knee, so he's going to be a beast. And then De'Aaron Buchanan is the hybrid player that we show a lot of love on the show. Defensively, I like what they got, but I think you're right. They got to go. They got to get somebody in the draft, like one player that is an edge player that just sends them over the top.
Yes. You can argue that they lost 3 or 4 games on special teams last year.
They got a new kicker.
They got Mr. Dawson.
Mr. Dawson, you broke the news that he was free.
Ageless wonder. But they lost,
You're right.
Nothing against Chandler Cannizzaro and the snapper and all that, but you remember those games, that Seattle game when it was 6-6 late, and then the opening game against the Patriots. Special teams killed them last year. They upgraded across the board.
I think they need what I like to call a DUA. It's a DW, defensive weapon. That's what they need, Peter. That's my new term. Save that
My
DUA.
offensive weapon I'm excited about with the Cardinals, J.J. Nelson. I talked about him quite a bit on the show. He's like a good speed, game breaker, younger receiver for Carson Palmer to try to make it happen. Great NFC West Offseason Overhaul. You can head over to NFL.com/offseason overhaul and check out Mark Sessler. Hey, Sessler, his piece, which is a complete breakdown of the division.